This is to subpoena the immigration records of Ilhan Omar and her alleged brother, husband, and another husband whose names I cannot pronounce. Immigration fraud and denaturalization processes, potential criminal liability, things that we needed to address.
They're already dismissing this as insignificant. Just another committee dispute, they say. Routine procedure. Background noise. Washington uses that phrase often, usually right before tensions rise and arguments over authority take center stage. History shows that when uncomfortable facts surface, the first response is rarely clarity. It's delay, debate, and legal framing. That's why this moment deserves your attention. Take a second to like, subscribe, and stay with us until the end, because in cases like this, the reaction often reveals more than the original claim. What unfolded today wasn't symbolic or hypothetical. It happened on the record, in plain terms. A sitting member of Congress became the subject of a subpoena effort focused on immigration records. That alone changes the conversation. And then a word entered the discussion that's never used casually: denaturalization. It wasn't mentioned for effect. It surfaced because the legal implications are real. This is where the narrative begins to shift. What started as what some called routine oversight is now moving toward a serious legal confrontation, one that could reshape how eligibility for federal office is examined and enforced. This is no longer about procedure or political theater. It's about documentation, legal standards, and accountability. The stakes are higher than many are admitting, and the outcome could set a precedent that reaches far beyond this case. So let's slow down, examine the records, and walk through the facts, because this is where the paper trail begins to matter.
Now, Chair recognizes Ms. Mace to speak on the Garcia amendment to her motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I support Representative Garcia's amendment, and you beat me to it. I was going to do this on the House Armed Services Committee, and I'm a little jealous that you beat me to it. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. It is the best sunshine, and if there are individuals, I don't care about party, I don't care about affiliation, this needs to be we need to get to the bottom of it and what's going on. And quite frankly, I don't think someone that allegedly is doing arms deals should be sitting on the Foreign Affairs Committee or the House Armed Services Committee. And if this is what gets to the bottom of what's happening over there, then I support it, and I support the amendment, and let's do it.
All right, you yield back. You yield to me. So I've had several members request information about trying to determine if Ms. Omar was involved in any of the Somali fraud and this and that. The thing that I've told people is the Ethics Committee is set up to do that. That's what the Ethics Committee's sole purpose is to investigate members. So we've got a motion by Mr. Garcia to amend Ms. Mace's motion. Both the amendment and the motion seek this committee to investigate sitting members of Congress. That's not something the Oversight Committee does, but we're a Democratic committee, and I'm not telling anybody in here how to vote. You vote however you want. But that's what the Ethics Committee role is. That's their jurisdiction. And I just wanted to state that. And again, look, I'm for whatever. I'm for transparency. You all vote the way you want. This committee's wired. You're going to vote the way you want anyway. I don't think the ranking member can tell his members how to vote, and I can't tell my members how to vote. I'm just telling you that's what the Ethics Committee's sole purpose in life is. So,
Mr. Chairman,
just stating that.
on a point of order.
Mr. Chairman.
Which one do we want to? Mr. Lynch.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, if I believe you're correct in your assessment that is not something within our jurisdiction. That would mean that motion would be out of order, not subject to a vote, and let's do this anyway, even though it's not within our jurisdiction.
We can do pretty much what we want in this committee, but I just want to make it very clear so we don't start going down this road, or this committee will just turn into investigating other members, whoever's in control. That's what the Ethics Committee set up to do. I'm not. Look, Ms. Mace,
someone beat their wife and it was covered up, we should find out. Someone married their brother to commit immigration fraud, we should find out. That's what this committee can do.
I understand.
Let's not defame members of Congress. Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to add to you. I just want to agree, first of all. I think oversight Democrats We don't believe either of these motions should be discussed. This is not the place to be going after members in this way. If there's a concern about a member, it should be at the Ethics Committee. But if members on the majority are going to go after members in our caucus, we're going to do the same. And so if the Republican majority wants to remove this amendment or vote this amendment down completely, we would join you on that. But what we're not going to do is allow the attack on one of our members.
And I'm
Mr.
not
Chairman.
defending or opposing. I'm just saying that's what the ethics.
This is what we do up here. We just protect each other and protect our own, and nobody ever gets held accountable for anything up here. That's what this whole thing is BS.
It goes to the Ethics Committee.
Chair recognizes.
Which
Well,
then
we're
it dies
going
in
to
a black
vote on
hole.
this. Everybody's going to vote on this. We're going to vote on this because there's been a motion amendment. We're going to vote on the amendment and the motion.
This sequence begins around the 12-second mark, when Representative Nancy Mace presents her motion in a calm and deliberate manner. There's no raised voice, no dramatic pause, and no performance for cameras. She cites House Rule 10, outlining the Oversight Committee's authority, and then clearly explains the scope of her request. The focus is on immigration-related records connected to Ilhan Omar, including questions surrounding family relationships and possible gaps in enforcement. The stated purpose is narrow: to evaluate whether existing laws around denaturalization and immigration oversight contain weaknesses that need reform. What stands out just as much is what Mace does not say. She does not accuse anyone of wrongdoing. She does not claim conclusions. Instead, she frames the issue strictly as oversight, fact-finding, not judgment. That framing is important because it aligns with the committee's role. And it's precisely at that point that the atmosphere in the room begins to shift. Almost immediately, the response moves away from the substance of the request. Representative Garcia introduces an amendment that redirects the spotlight entirely, calling for subpoenas targeting Republican Corey Mills. The amendment pulls in unrelated areas: military records, business dealings, communications with the Justice Department, even a domestic matter, none of which connect directly to the original motion. The intent isn't subtle, and Garcia openly acknowledges it. This isn't about Mills himself. It's a warning shot. Investigate one member, and retaliation follows. That isn't oversight, it's political deterrence. Next comes the emotional framing. Garcia declares Ilhan Omar as fully American, a fighter, and a symbol of national success. Those statements may resonate politically, but they don't answer a legal question. They function as narrative protection, not evidence. Because if documentation truly had no relevance, there would be no urgency to block access to it. What follows may be the most telling portion of the hearing. Suddenly, procedural concerns take center stage. The Ethics Committee is invoked. Jurisdiction becomes a priority. Arguments surface that this committee shouldn't review matters involving members of Congress at all. Translated plainly, the message is familiar: delay the process, redirect it, and allow it to fade quietly. One member even states outright that lawmakers tend to shield their own and that accountability rarely follows. It wasn't accidental wording. It was an unusually directed mission. Nancy Mace, however, doesn't retreat. She agrees to the amendment, not out of political convenience, but on principle. Her position is straightforward. Transparency applies equally. If records resolve concerns, release them. If laws exist, they apply to everyone, including those who write them. That stance shifts the tension in the room. The concern is no longer about a single vote. It's about precedent, because at that moment, a term that once lived mostly in online debates becomes part of the official congressional record: denaturalization. Not as a threat, not as rhetoric, but as a legal concept under discussion. Eventually, Garcia withdraws his amendment and moves to table the motion entirely. There's no extended debate, just a swift vote. The motion is paused, for now, but several things were not erased. Immigration fraud and denaturalization were openly discussed. Party lines formed instantly. An oversight authority was implicitly acknowledged, even if reluctantly. This wasn't a conclusion, it was a signal. Once subpoenas enter the conversation, timelines begin, even when leadership attempts to slow them.
This is to subpoena the immigration records of Ilhan Omar and her alleged brother husband and another husband whose names I cannot pronounce. Immigration fraud and denaturalization processes, potential criminal liability, things that we needed to address.
They're already dismissing this as insignificant. Just another committee dispute, they say. Routine procedure. Background noise. Washington uses that phrase often, usually right before tensions rise and arguments over authority take center stage. History shows that when uncomfortable facts surface, the first response is rarely clarity. It's delay, debate, and legal framing. That's why this moment deserves your attention. Take a second to like, subscribe, and stay with us until the end, because in cases like this, the reaction often reveals more than the original claim. What unfolded today wasn't symbolic or hypothetical. It happened on the record, in plain terms. A sitting member of Congress became the subject of a subpoena effort focused on immigration records. That alone changes the conversation. And then a word entered the discussion that's never used casually: denaturalization. It wasn't mentioned for effect. It surfaced because the legal implications are real. This is where the narrative begins to shift. What started as what some called routine oversight is now moving toward a serious legal confrontation, one that could reshape how eligibility for federal office is examined and enforced. This is no longer about procedure or political theater. It's about documentation, legal standards, and accountability. The stakes are higher than many are admitting, and the outcome could set a precedent that reaches far beyond this case. So let's slow down, examine the records, and walk through the facts, because this is where the paper trail begins to matter.